Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I think there's probably a few more people out there. They may straggle in, but hope you're enjoying your lunch. Thanks very much for coming. We're happy to host a luncheon, but you have to sit through the talk. And the only thing I will allow is if you want to head to the dessert table, get up and do that. I won't feel offended if you prefer dessert over my speech. But, and coffee's over here too. So my name is Rick Van Nieuwenhuizen. I'm the President and CEO of Contango Ore. As you may have heard at the luncheon, just a bit of background. I started a company called Nova Gold 25 some odd years ago. We made a major discovery in Alaska, the Donlin deposit, a 40 million ounce gold deposit, 30 million ounce reserve, good grade, 2.2 grams per ton. It's one of the largest, highest, best grade, coolest deposits on the planet. I left the company as CEO in 2011. That's actually, I think maybe just at the end of 2011. That's 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, and they're still permitting the project. When I left, the value of the company was $2.2 billion. It's still $2.2 billion today. The gold price has more than doubled. So there's a lesson in there. And the next company we set up was called, originally called Nova Copper. We were trying to use the Nova branding, and we ended up changing the name to Trilogy over time. And we made it another, not really a major discovery, but we developed a known deposit, the Arctic deposit. It's a high quality, high grade, 5% open pit copper mine, or hope to be one day copper mine. In Alaska also, northern part of Alaska. We made a new discovery at the Bornite project. So we were really, firing on all cylinders. And this time I said, okay, we're going to get this thing permitted. We're going to go the distance here. We're going to put the effort in. So over a 7-year period, we permitted a mine, starting under the Obama administration, and it went into the Trump administration. Got our permits after 7 years of hard work, meeting all of the criteria, at least we had thought. And of course, then the Biden administration came along and undid pretty much everything that the Trump administration did, good, bad, and ugly. So I left the company a little over 3 years ago now. The market cap was 400 million, now it's 100 million, because people don't know what's going to happen in permitting hell. So again, another lesson learned out of that is, if you can, avoid permitting. Not easy to do, but this story here is about as close as you can get to minimizing risks around permitting, minimizing risks around having to raise capital to build a mill and a tailings facility and to permit all that crap, because we're not doing that, because Kinross did that 25 years ago at the Fort Knox deposit. And so we've managed to keep a very, really tight share structure. We have 6.8 million shares outstanding, which is fewer shares than most startups. Most companies, what you'd call a shell company, have 2 or 3 times that many shares. We're traded in New York Stock Exchange. We're not Canadian. We're not a penny stock. Don't get sticker shock when you look up our trading symbol CTGO and see it trading at $29. It's not 29 cents, and it's not a mistake. But remember, we only have 6.8 million shares outstanding. So with that little bit of introduction, I'll, again, thank you for coming. Again, please feel free to come up and grab some dessert or coffee, or if you need to stay awake. I'll try to entertain you a little bit. So I think I have to point this thing over there. Forward-looking statements. I promise I won't lie, but I will be making forward-looking statements. And there's some language in here about non-GAAP measurements. I'm not even sure exactly what that means, but it's on there. Now my lawyers are happy. So we're in Alaska. We've worked in Alaska a lot. It's not that we haven't worked elsewhere. I've worked all over the world. I was Vice President of Exploration for Placer Dome, responsible for Africa and Asia. Worked in the stands, worked in Russia, had a wonderful time there, would never invest a nickel for obvious reasons. So all of our projects are in Alaska, but we certainly have worked elsewhere and we're looking at opportunities. We'll continue to look at opportunities elsewhere as well. But my criteria is if I'll bring my family on vacation there, I'll work there and I'll spend my money and my shareholders' money. I'm not going to funky places. So our main project I'll talk mostly about is Manh Choh. That means Big Lake for those of you who are filling out your little forms. We made a discovery, 1.3 million ounce gold deposit, open pit, at the surface, 4 grams, averaging 4 grams per ton. It's a resource. It's on private land owned by the Tetlin tribe. It's an Alaskan Native tribe. Not to get into too much detail on it, but they own the land. The tribe actually owns the land that we're working on. We've had a business relationship with the tribe for 12, 13 years now. We've worked together. We've solved problems together. And now with our large company, Kinross, coming in, they've obviously taken it sort of to the next level, if you will, because we're basically in the process now of constructing the mine. But I'll get into that in a second here. A couple of things unique by Alaska standards. I'm used to working on projects in the middle of nowhere. This is right off the highway. This is right off the Alaska Highway, which I'll show you in a second here. So lots and lots of advantages. The main advantage that we have is grade. Average grade being mined in open pit mines today is less than 1 gram. We'll be trucking 8 gram material to the Fort Knox mill. So basically about 10 times the average grade being mined today in open pits. Oops. So there's a photo of the mine site, or the future mine site. There's 2 deposits. See kind of by the density of the drill roads there. The main, we're not really too fancy with names, the main deposit and the north deposit. The north deposit being north of the main deposit. It's mining and geology. We don't get too caught up on names. Except Manh Choh, and that does mean Big Lake, as I mentioned. And that's really to recognize the importance of that lake to the tribe. It's a subsistence. It's a subsistence lake for fishing and hunting. So it's a good reminder for us of what we need to be doing right in order to maintain that social license. We just recently spent a fair bit of money, obviously, finding the thing, but what you really want to do is get the thing into production and get the cash flow. That's the holy grail of any junior, unless they just want to get bought out, dress themselves up and hopefully somebody buys them out. The proverbial lipstick on a pig story. This is not that story. We're actually going to get this thing into production. We're actually constructing it now with our partner Kinross. This year's budget with the receiving permits, we've now augmented the budget to $40 million. Just shy of $40 million, and that's about half of that budget is just, actually a little more than half of that is to actually construct things, and I'll show you where we are in that. We will be in production in 2024. Everything goes well, early 2024 for Q1. If there's some delays, and I'll talk about where I think maybe there possibly could be some delays, but plan is to be in production in 2024. Here's the economics of the project. This is based on a Kinross feasibility study. Again, we're mining here, so what we're building on site is really, really simple. We're not building much on site. The mill and the tailings facility located at Fort Knox, again, has been operating for 25 years. So their feasibility study, based on processing the ore at Fort Knox, will produce just a little under 1 million ounces of gold, or about 914,000 ounces of gold equivalent. It's mostly gold. There's a little bit of silver here, which is just shy of a 1 million ounce resource, averaging 8 grams per ton. The capital to raise for the project is $182 million, and they've recommended, as we continue to see inflation, what was it, 8.2 today or something like that? It was another not good number. So our manager, Kinross, the manager, has advised the owners that we should maybe count on having an extra 10% of the 182. So call it 200 million even for capital. Our share of that would be 60 million. Now, a couple important things here. We've already spent so I'm taking the total number now. Our share is 30%. It's a 70-30 joint venture. And they paid money for their ownership of the joint venture. They paid $93 million cash to ourselves and our former business partner, Royal Gold, who we basically entered into a three-way agreement where we were kind of gave everybody what they wanted. Royal Gold really wanted a royalty, so that's what they ended up with. Kinross wanted majority interest, so we sold them 30% of our interest, and we allowed them to buy Royal Gold's 40% interest, because obviously we had a first right of refusal on Royal Gold's interest. And of course, we wanted to have a partner that had the ability to get this project into production quickly and relatively painlessly, again, by not having to build a mill and a tailings facility and all the capital and all the permitting required to build those two items, which probably would take you 5 years to permit a new tailings facility in the United States, just being realistic about it. And then the capital number to build a new mill and tailings facility, frankly, I don't think anybody could give you an accurate answer. They'd have to goose it up by 10, 20, 30%. I mean, the official CPI is, what, 8.2? We all know that's BS. Just go buy something at Costco. So in the industry, in construction industry, we're seeing inflation of 20 to 30%. So that's, if you want to be realistic about things, that any new project that has a PEA or a PFS that's a year old, add 30%, you're probably, if you believe their number, add 30%. If you don't believe their number, then just move on. Don't buy the stock. But we're building this thing now. So this is all happening now. It's not something that's going to happen in 5 years from now. Again, we're fully permitted for construction. That's what we're doing. I'll show you some photos. Now, all-in sustaining costs, Kinross's guidance is $900 an ounce. We're still working out on what that will mean for us, because there's some details that we have to work out with Fort Knox. Because Fort Knox is an arm's length transaction with Fort Knox, even though it's owned by Kinross, our partner. It still has to be an arm's length arrangement. So we're still working our way through those details. My guidance is probably somewhere, it's going to be over 900, and I think it's going to be somewhere in the $1,000 to $1,100 range. So that still gives you, $500, $600 margin at today's gold price. Our share of the ounces, 67,500. Do some quick math. You're looking at $30, $40 million of free cash flow. We have 6.8 million shares outstanding, no warrants. We have 100,000 options, but it's you can just do some quick math. That's a lot of cash flow per share. So we're working on getting the debt financing lined up. It's a very financeable project because it's low capital. And just to go back to the capital number, so if we start with the 182, I'll add the 10% on a little bit later just because it makes the math in your head easier. But 182, we've already spent, of the $40 million budget, we've spent 30 million of it on capital. So that becomes 152. 30 million of the 182 was purchasing trucks and trailers, which is something that we, Contango, didn't really want to do because it's a 5-year mine life, 4.5, 5-year mine life, and we just didn't think that was good economic sense for us. Kinross may have other things, other mines, satellite mines in the area that they can more efficiently use the trucks and have more reason why they want the trucks. So that $30 million comes off the top. So now we spent 30 already. Now the 30 comes off the 150. So now we're 120. Our share is 36.6. Now I add my 10%. It's a nice, close to an even $40 million. And we have a $200 million market cap company. Not a big stretch to do a debt financing to raise the capital for that. So we're definitely within earshot, despite all this inflationary pressure. Just to show you, get you a feel for the area. So we are, as I said, just off the Alaska Highway. This is a paved highway. It didn't used to be. It was built to support the war effort for the Lend-Lease programs when the Russians were our friends. and they flew planes up to Nome, and then they shuttled them across to Russia. That's the reason this highway was built back then. And we're about 10 miles off the highway as the crow flies, about 18 road miles. And that highway goes right up to Fort Knox. Fort Knox, big mine, big low-grade mine. I think it was one of the first sub-gram or right around a gram deposits to go into production with a 40,000 ton per day mill. Took a while to get everything tweaked and working, but it's been a good mine for 25 years. But it's underutilized. And then in the low grade now at Fort Knox isn't a gram anymore. Gram would be considered high grade. The grade at Fort Knox that goes through the mill is half a gram. So this mill is going to receive our 8 gram per ton ore. It's going to love that. It's actually going to enhance their recoveries and do some good things for the Fort Knox ore as well. But of course, what it does for us is that we don't have to build a mill. We don't have to capitalize a mill. We don't have to permit it. And if you follow the junior mining space and the I want to be a gold miner syndrome, most juniors fail miserably because they don't get something right, or they run out of capital, the market timing is bad, things cost more, mill starts up and the foundation cracks. Just, the proverbial shit happens. This thing's been operating for 25 years. It's got huge capacity. And Kinross is a known commodity. You may not love their stock price, but as an operator, they've done a good job, and certainly they've done a great job in Alaska. Here's the site. I mean, this is about as dumb and simple of a mining operation as it gets. It's 2 small open pits. The waste rock will be categorized as long-term waste that doesn't have the potential to leach metals or to generate acid. And then the rocks that have potential to leach metals or to generate acid, they call it PAG rock. Those are separated and they'll be put back in the bottom of the pit at the end of the mine life, and then covered with water so that they don't oxidize. That's a pretty standard bulletproof way of dealing with waste rocks. What's underway right now is the, does this have a pointer? Whoops, what the hell did I do? I will not do that again. I'm going to come over here and point. So this road is what we're building now. This is down in the lowlands, and this goes up in the hills. This was a drill access road, so it was a little steeper than we wanted it to be able to access the highway haul trucks that will haul the ore directly from the edge of the pit up to the Fort Knox mine. So it just kind of simplified the whole materials handling process. So that's what's under construction today. A little bit of a blow-up map. I forgot I had that in there. You can see the town of Tok. Tok is not on the private lands that are owned by the Tetlin tribe, and you can see where the Tetlin villages is. And this is Mancho, the lake there. So we're in construction. We've received permits. Took us about 9 months from start to finish, which is what it ought to take you to get permits. Not 10 years, not 7 years, and then, oh, we need to do more studies because, Mr. Biden doesn't like Mr. Trump, whatever. So we're under construction. So basically about $30 million of this year's budget is to build stuff, and it's mostly roads in the camp. So just some more, photos of building roads. Basically, this road is going to be a 6% road, and again, we're basically flattening it out, if you will. So it's going to be a little longer and a little flatter, so that the highway trucks that haul the ore up to Fort Knox can easily maneuver year-round. You have to build things for the wintertime, and it's dark, and it's cold, and we don't get a lot of snow in this part of Alaska. This is interior Alaska, so we don't really have a lot of snowfall. So that's not really an issue. Once it's winter, it's like winter here. I mean, this is winter when it doesn't matter whether you're measuring temperature in Celsius or Fahrenheit. That's frickin' cold. So we're finishing up this is the lowland road here. We got the staging area down. We reclaim as we go, and that's a pretty common practice in the mining industry. You hear a lot of whining about how the mining industry doesn't reclaim things. That was probably true 100 years ago, and we certainly continue to live with that legacy. But today's mining is a cradle to grave sort of operation. You understand before you build it, you know how you're going to reclaim it, and that's common practice. It's not something that just we do. It's just what is common practice in the mining industry now. This is a picture of putting in a culvert. The culvert's not actually there yet. They're sitting on the sidelines. This is one of the things that we do. Again, it's we used to just build roads, and if the roads went across the creek, then the fish couldn't get from one side of the road to the other side of the road. It's just like touch it for the fish. It's like, well, we don't do that anymore. That's before we were ignorant. So now we put culverts in, and we put them in a place where they're low enough that the fish can actually go from one side of the creek, and it opens up habitat for fish, and that's a good thing. It's not hard to do. It's not ridiculously expensive to do. Maybe a little bit cheaper than just saying the hell with the fish. But again, this is all pretty simple stuff. And when you have that name Mancho in your mind, and you say, okay, remember, I'm gonna make sure the fish can get to the frickin' lake. Okay, this is how we do it. Not hard. So the other thing we're building is the camp. This will be both the construction camp and the operations camp. It's a 200-person camp. And this is kind of a cool story, because this was a hotel that I can't remember, it was Princess Cruise Lines or one of the cruise lines built. And they used to, these poor people, they'd drop them in Haines, Alaska, bring them up on the cruise ships up to Haines or Skagway, and then they'd bus them up to Fairbanks. Now, Alaska's a beautiful place, but that is a long bus ride. And then they'd get to Tok, which, Tok's nice, but you can't see Mount McKinley from Tok. You can't see any glaciers from Tok. You can see some nice little hills. But anyways, they built a hotel here. It didn't get used. They sold it during the year before COVID. The guy who bought it had grandiose plans of building a nice hotel. Of course, he got screwed. So we ended up purchasing this and refurbishing it, making it into our camp. But the cool part of the story is we're going to turn it over to the Tetlin tribe as an elders facility when the mine closes. So these are all things, again, you can plan. If you plan right, you can do right. So this facility is about 90% complete, and will be operational here in pretty short order. A lot of local hire, a lot of local training. Again, this is not something that's new. This is something that we just do as part of our normal business. And we've been here. Contango's been here since I think 2008 is when we started here. So we've been here quite a while. Kinross is doing a great job of continuing that outreach, community outreach, and community support, and local hire and local training. So that's that ESG score. We've been doing it way before it was 3 letters back to back. And because of that, there is lots of community support for this project. Huge community support for the project. Benefits to the greater part of Alaska. This keeps Fort Knox going. So that keeps 400 or 500 jobs at Fort Knox going. It's pretty significant, and it's obviously going to donate to the state coffers. Importantly, to the Tetlin tribe, they have a royalty. There's only 300 tribal members, so they'll do really, really well. Lots of jobs, lots of jobs. So we'll be in production in 2024. I mentioned what could delay us, and it's building these trucks. And it's not the trucks, it's not the steel, it's the chips. So when I asked the question of our joint venture partner, said, so what can go wrong? That was the answer. We might be able to get enough chips for the trucks and trailers. These will probably be the safest trucks on the highway. Kinross has made sure that if there have been any concerns about this project, it's about the transportation plan. Not about the mine, not about water quality, it's about the transportation plan. So these trucks will be super safe. Fatigue awareness, all that kind of stuff is all programmed into trucks these days. So the driver starts to do this, the engine shuts off, and he has to pull over. Anyways, USA, Mack. I don't know if it'd be Mack trucks, but they're local, America local. So I wanted to lots of exploration upside in this project. I think if there's any sort of knock on the project is that it has a 4.5-year mine life reserve right now. But we haven't drilled between the two deposits. When a geologist looks at that, they just kind of scratch their head and like, why the hell didn't you drill between them? But when you're in that production mode, you want to infill drill, and you want to make sure what you know is there. You tend to start going away from, the exploration spirit of, well, what do I not know? Where should I be drilling next? We'll get there. And this slide, I think, really captures that, because the two black blobs there are the main and north deposits, and they're sitting on a geochem map showing golden soils, and there's lots and lots of anomalies out here. And this map represents about 10% of the area that we have under lease from the Tetlin tribe. Everything in that map fits inside that circle with the mine symbol on it. And the Tetlin lease is about the size of Rhode Island, so about the size of a small state. We own the land adjacent to it, in pink there, that we own that 100%. That's not part of the joint venture. There's what's outlined in blue there with the state mining claims that we contributed to the joint venture, but everything else we own 100% of. And these are early stage exploration projects, so not worth spending a lot of time here on, but good projects. So you can see where they're located there around Manchot, and we also have the Shamrock project, which we staked. It came open for mineral entry, so we staked it last year. We've done a little bit of work on it. I'll spend some time talking about Lucky Shot, because I think that's our next project that we think has a good shot, excuse the pun, of being another producing mine in Alaska. Historic mine, this is from the 30s. It was operational in the very late 20s until 1942, when President Roosevelt used the War Act to shut down all gold mining in the United States. People forget this stuff, right? This might happen again, but not to get sidetracked, because that was done for the war effort. It was actually done to control the gold price, but whatever. That this thing was just shut down. It was never mined since. The only thing they did here, and I got a sample up here, you're welcome to come take a look at, it's quartz and free gold, very simple project. There's been 2 periods of exploration work done since, significant exploration work done since 1942. In the 1980s, Ensearch Oil and Gas, well-known, still around, oil and gas company, very successful. In 1980, when the gold price shot up, remember, they decided to get in the gold business. They thought that was a good idea for about 2 years, and then they said, this business does not work like the oil business. And so what they did is they built a tunnel, and they built a mill. Built a mill before they had a resource, which is never a good idea. And then they just, like I said, this is a silly business. We don't get this business. So they literally just walked away. So that was 1980, 82. I think they were gone by 83. In the 2005 to 2010 time frame, Full Metals, Vancouver junior company, decided to explore the property from the top of the mountain. It's a big mountain, and they set up drill rigs at the top of the mountain with huge support cribbing to have a drill rig sitting on the side of a mountain. That's not easy, but they did it, and then they drilled holes. They drilled 170 holes, 170 some odd holes, and outlined about 120,000 ounce resource at 18 grams per ton. It's now considered a historic resource because it was done back in the, too long ago now for us to say it's current. But we have all the core, and we can go back and resample and test all that. So we're pretty confident that that resource is there, but it's at the top of the mountain. We want to actually go back to what inserts had the right idea of putting a tunnel in and going under just where they had mined previously, which is the lucky shot. It's called a 500 level. But here you can see the whole system. So inserts is kind of in the middle of the vein, War Babies on the east side, and Coleman, which is where Full Metals was drilling from the top of the mountain. That's the sort of the western end of the vein. This is a vertical map of that same area, and you can see here where all that historic production came from. So that's the 250,000 ounces that averaged 40 grams per ton. Very high grade. Now they selectively mined this stuff. It was, you know, that's what they did in the old days, if you will. But that's a hell of a grade for Portsmouth. You can come up and take a look at this, and you understand why it's such a good grade. Where Full Metals drilled was up in here. And what we're doing is, Insearch had the right idea. They only got about 2/3 of the way towards the vein. So we just finished what they started. We're using, all the modern tools and techniques are available to us. The drone, this is aerial drone footage, so we've got really good survey control of the surface. But we've also used these things underground. These are pretty cool. It's just a drone in a cage, and there's sensors around the cage, and you just kind of hold it in your hand and like fly away, little birdie. And it goes and it self-corrects, maps the whole tunnel, and so you know where everything is. It gives you texture of the rock as well, so you know basically where the rock stands really well, or where there's more areas where there's faulting or something like that you need to put more support in. So, and this took about 2 hours, whereas it would take you 2 or 3 weeks to do this by hand. Safety is always important. We are a mining operation, and that's something we keep in mind all the time. It's not like surface exploration where you're under a sort of different set of rules. Underground mining, you are mining. And so you follow MSHA and OSHA and very strict safety policies. I was lucky to get Chris Kennedy as our mine manager. He'd spent 8 years at Pogo, which is the largest underground mine in Alaska. It produces close to about 300,000 ounces of gold this year, I think is what they're tracked to. But he ran that thing for 8 years. So Sumitomo sold it to the Australians, and so we were lucky to be able to catch Chris at a moment of weakness there. So we keep safety stats. Again, that's the most important thing in mining. You don't want to have any issues, and we've had a very good, clean bill of health so far. So this is just a view of what we're doing. That was the Insearch tunnel in blue. We drilled pilot holes ahead of ourselves, about 10 of them. Every hole hit the vein. While we're doing that, we advanced the tunnel towards the vein. And then those are the pilot holes. We hit the vein every time we drill the hole. We're starting to get assays back finally, but obviously this is going to run obviously. This is kind of the 3D view of what we're doing. So there's the green's the tunnel. We're building a drift. We're about 2/3 of the way finished. Actually, about another week we'll be done. And then the idea is to bring the drills. We'll be finished drilling all the pilot holes by then, and then we just come in these stations and do fan drilling across from underground. Now we're drilling 30-meter to 70-meter long holes rather than 200-meter long holes. And that's how there's an adage when you're looking at high-grade veins that you drill for structure and drift for grade. So high-grade veins are finicky. You can drill one hole and it'll run 1 gram, and you can drill a hole next to it and it'll run 50 grams. And so you've got to drill a lot of holes. That's the drill for structure, drift for grade. So that's what we're doing. We think we can develop a mine. Give us 2 years here. We can develop a project that I think can deliver something in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 grams per ton. And we know that Fort Knox is still a hungry mill up there. So when the time comes right, we'll go and talk to our friends at Kinross. So happy to answer any questions. I'm not sure how much time we got left. 5, 10 minutes? it's 20 years and renewable. And there's not really any practical limit there. Should be coming up here pretty soon. We're doing all the QA/QC work now, so we're probably gonna release the 5 holes that we drilled because the tunnel's in the middle. We drilled 5 holes on this side and 5 holes on that side. So I think the first 5 holes should be done by the end of the month. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. And then the next 5 holes from the east side. But all 10 holes hit the vein. Yeah, so basically the missing number is the all-in sustaining cost, which is going to start, I'll say, starts at sort of 900, and we're going to add to it because of the toll. We have to pay the toll. We pay our 30% of the toll. The joint venture pays the toll, but again, Kinross is kind of giving money to itself. So, and that's how they account for their share. So, short answer is we're negotiating that now because it is a negotiation. One of the things I negotiated was we didn't want to buy the trucks. I didn't want to put our share of $30 million for $30 million worth of trucks for a 5-year mine life. It just didn't make sense to me. So we won't pay the capital, but it'll show up on our own sustaining cost. So that's just an example of why ours is going to be higher than. By negotiation. I mean, there's guidance. We have a tolling agreement document, but we've got the numbers in there. So. Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm a significant shareholder for my own personal wealth, so I kind of like that idea. Oh, sorry. The questions are: we going to, when we're in cash flow and everything's going as planned, would we pay a dividend? The answer is I don't know yet, but I like the idea. Again, because we've been very prudent with our share capital, we only have 6.8 million shares outstanding. Our stock's at $29 or so. So, and we are going to have to raise capital equity. We're working on the debt now. We'll get, but there'll still be an equity component. But it's in the $30 million range, so that's 1.5 million shares, 2 million shares. I mean, even in this crummy market, that's all very doable. So yeah, I like the idea. Too early to probably make a decision on it, but yes. So this time, we just actually looked that up, and I'm glad you asked the question. So this time last year, we were trading between $18 and $20. So, and now we're trading at 29. So we are, I think, and I just asked Brian this, and he said we were the top performer by a long shot. That's a 50% increase in share price in a year. And it's mostly just about getting the story out. And people, still don't, a lot of people still don't know the story. Sure. Yeah. Private land. Yeah, no, I didn't explain that, and thanks for the question. It is a hell of a lot easier permitting stuff on private land, and when it's owned by an Alaska Native tribe, and the tribe tells the federal government, even in the Biden administration, that they want this mine permitted yesterday, the Biden administration pays attention. So yeah. In fact, you talked about, I think there's some questions about Trilogy earlier. That's what's going to make the Trilogy project go, and the road go, and the permitting go there, is the tribe. When the tribes get aligned, the federal government will step the hell out of the way. For this project, the federal permits are done. Those are always the slow ones and the ones you worry about because they become politicized. State permits in Alaska is an open book process that nobody worries about. Again, we're not building a tailings facility here, so there's no water for anybody to worry about. You know, we're not building a mine and a mill. We're building a mine, sorry. We're not building a mill, so we don't have a big power plant to worry about air quality. You don't have water quality issues. You have, you know, your typical construction site, stormwater drainage controls, runoff controls, making sure the water's, you filter the water and it's not adding turbidity to the local waters. We're in the uplands. The mine's on top of a hill, so we don't have any water coming in on us. The mine's not at the bottom of a big drainage or something like that. That would create a lot more water issues, if you will. But we don't even have that. The mine's at the top of the hill, so the only water you have to worry about is what falls on your head. And you just, that's the water you need to sort of contain, and we'll use every bit of that water, and then some. But there's plenty of water around, so it's, usually mines have, water's always the biggest issue at any mine. It's either too much or too little. It's kind of hard to find the Goldilocks stuff. Sure. Anytime now. Yeah, we're working on the debt piece. We'll get that announced, and then my guess is we'll be doing the financing in November sometime. Yeah, lots of targets to look at here, and also, you know, when you're starting up a mine, you want to make sure what you know is absolute. So you do all sorts of infill drilling and geotechnical drilling and hydrology and metallurgy and all that stuff. So you know the ore body like really, really well. What you tend to shy away from is looking for other stuff, which is, it's the right approach. I mean, once you know you have an ore body, at some point you just got to stop drilling exploration holes and drill everything internal to make sure that you know exactly what you're mining. So this ore body, remember the resource I said was 1.3 million ounces at 4 grams. We're using an elevated cutoff grade. Kinross still uses a $1,200 gold price. So we basically had doubled the grade of the deposit, 8 grams per ton now. And we've only lost about 300,000 ounces of resource. Not many ore bodies on the planet can do that. Usually when you, if you want to double the grade, you're going to lose, you know, probably 2/3 of your resource. This is an extraordinary ore body that way. It's very, very high grade, and it also happens to start right at the surface. Yeah. Well, this is obviously part of a joint venture, so, you know, we have to listen to Big Brother. But the most important thing for Kinross is to keep the Fort Knox mill running. Because when it doesn't run, it means that you have to shut it down, and that's a big bill. And in Alaska, you bond a project. So let's say you have and I think Kinross has a $100 million bond at Fort Knox. You don't get to use that money. You have to use your cash flow to fix the mine, and the bond stays in place until the mine is reclaimed. That's a 5-10 year process. So yeah, the last thing Kinross wants to do is shut that mine down. So we'll just help them feed it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, well, not really, because their mill is only set up to extract gold. It's a gold mill, yeah. They don't have anything. The Fort Knox ore is like ridiculously simple. It's like the Lucky Shot ore, except it's mostly granite and a little bit of quartz vein. It's kind of the opposite of Lucky Shot. But yeah, it's just gold. There is a little bit of copper in this ore, and that's probably an upside scenario that I'm sure we'll get around to taking a look at down the road. But the main thing is to get this mine in production so that Fort Knox doesn't have to shut down. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's dark and cold, wear clothes, and turn the light on. Keep people safe, that's the mantra in the mining business. And oddly enough, it's more efficient to work in the wintertime. The equipment works better in the wintertime when it's cold. Diesel equipment especially. You just have to add the additives, but the fuels, it's more efficient on fuel. And truck tires. Yeah. It was, yeah, and it was actually not 100% our decision. It was our partner at the time was Royal Gold. And Royal Gold's interest was in receiving a royalty, and so they wanted to, get someone into production, or get a partner in to put this thing into production. And so Kinross was a great solution because they have a hungry mill, but also because this ore is good enough quality, good enough grade to go through, to be able to be trucked up to that mill. It costs, you have to make a few assumptions here, but if you say $1,600 gold and $75 a barrel fuel, it costs about $1.5 grams to pay for the truck ride up to Fort Knox. That's how I think about it in terms of my cutoff grade. What extra grade do I have to pay for the truck ride? Sorry? Well, it's measured per ton. So, yeah. On that, yeah. So these aren't exactly the trucks that they're going to use, but they're pretty close to it. Yeah. These are the tandem truck and trailers. Yeah, they're 50,000 pounds in the truck and trailer combo. But these are going to be state-of-the-art trucks and trailers. Yeah, sorry. A little less than 50-50. Yeah. Probably 60-40. Debt to equity ratio on our, and that's 60 equity and 40 debt-ish. I think looks like time's up, so I appreciate the questions. Stop if you have other questions, just want to chat. We'll be around here, but also visit us at the booth at 2:15.